Welcome to the summit, What is the Unknown? And I can now introduce you to Paul Levy. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for being here. And you're an author, and we're going to be talking about your book, Quantum Revelation. And you have it there to show.
Yeah, totally. So the quantum revelation, let's see. Okay.
Yeah. And it is about quantum physics, and that's and more. It's about the unknown, you could say, exploring what is this world, what are we made of, why are we here. You go into everything, and that's kind of what your life has been about as well. And you have many different perspectives. You have it from the quantum view, quantum physics view, but also from a religious point of view. And then it's very the world. You kind of try to reflect the world in a quantum unknown point of view. And maybe you can start talking about the quantum physics. What is that?
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm happy to do that. So how I came, so I'm not a physicist at all. And actually, so I'm somebody in 1981 who had a huge spiritual awakening that almost killed me. And it destroyed my family, because then I got very quickly in the hands of psychiatry, who, gave me this misdiagnosis, thinking I was bipolar, and that was a whole nightmare. And with that, I don't need to go into the story, but in essence, in my spiritual awakening, which got catalyzed by this incredible suffering, and I don't need to go into that either right now, but the point is, the spiritual awakening happened, and all of a sudden, I began having the realization and the experience that this was a collective dream, that we're all co-dreaming up moment by moment into materialization. And basically I was so ecstatic and excited about what I was realizing. That's what freaked people out and got me hospitalized. And but it was a couple years that 4 or 5 times I got thrown in hospitals, and I understand now that was part of the awakening. That was, you could say, my descent into the underworld. But that's why I got so interested in quantum physics, because then over the years, when I would begin to study quantum physics, because I found myself in a parallel world. It looked just like the world I had lived in for the first 24 years of my life, but it was radically different in that things that were seemingly impossible in my previous world were happening, and stuff that could only happen in dreams were happening. And so when I found quantum physics, I began to understand that, oh, this is a map of the universe that I had fallen into. So as a non-physicist, just as a curious person, I began to study more and more about what quantum physics was saying. And I began to have the realization that, oh my God, this helped me to integrate my experience. Because to give you some context, so quantum physics came on the scene about 100 years ago. And before then, classical physics, pre-quantum physics, they envisioned this world as objectively existing, and we were separate observers who were just passively observing the world, trying to understand it. And then quantum physics came into the world. Whether it was discovered or created, that's a whole nother story. But quantum physics basically, in essence, has empirically proven that via our act of observing this universe, we're actually influencing the universe observed. And that's just like a dream. Because just remember, what I was realizing in my spiritual awakening was that, oh my God, this is a dream. It was like being in a night dream and having lucidity, and having the realization that I was dreaming and that we're all dreaming, but a lot of us aren't aware of that. And I certainly hadn't been. And so quantum physics, in pointing out that the act of observation is influencing the universe that we observe, is basically pointing out that the act of observation is creative. that we have this unbelievably enormous creative power via the way we perceive the universe and interpret it and place meaning on it. It's like we have this superhero power that all of us have 24/7. We've had it all along, but we don't know either that we've had it, or we don't know how to implement it in a way that serves us. And so in essence, quantum physics has empirically proven 100% guaranteed that this is a dream. Now, there's a huge controversy in quantum physics. Like, one thing that there's no controversy about is that, you know, all quantum physicists say, oh yeah, this is the greatest discovery ever in all of history in the realm of science. That there's no debate about. The controversy is, what does it mean? And so here I am, a non-physicist who's studying it and just pointing out, well, what it means, what it's showing us is that this is a collective dream. And that's what my book is about. And that opens up, when you begin to take into yourself what quantum physics is offering us about the nature of this world, that it's dreamlike, and our nature as that we're one of the dreamers in this dreamlike universe, it unlocks this vast, unimaginable creative power. And so that's just the smallest, you know, teeny weeny bit of the profound stuff that quantum physics is tapping into. And so yeah, I can talk about it for hours, but maybe I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, yeah, because there's also no time and space, and the three dimensions, there's not actually anything out there and something in here. There's not a subject object, although it all appears like that. And that is what the quantum physicist has come to.
Yeah. Well, that you know, the idea that the observer is the observed, that the subject object are not separate, you know, and so that cuts through that in Buddhism. That's the core, like cutting through and seeing through the duality of the subject object, of the self and other, of physical matter and mind, any of the opposites. That's what quantum physics is basically pointing at. And I'm actually pointing at that quantum. You see, in Tibetan Buddhism, there's this thing called the hidden treasures. Dharma is the word. And you know, and it's a real thing. Like, one of the lineage I do practice to, it keeps itself fresh over time by the discovery of these hidden treasures, the dharma. And the idea is that the enlightened nature of the mind plants within the fabric, the multidimensional fabric of the dream, these clues, these signals, these treasures that, just like when you get, as an individual, one-sided, your unconscious will send you a dream with symbols that'll, if you really get in alignment with the symbols, you'll get in balance, you know, it'll heal the one-sidedness. It's compensatory. In the same way, these dharma are like sort of alarm clocks that help us to wake up when we fall too much asleep. And so and the dharma isn't like some sort of fairy tale new age thing, you know, woo-woo magical thinking thing. It's actually, scholars really study this stuff. And I'm pointing out that quantum physics is a modern day analog to a dharma, that it came into the world and it came into our minds about 100 years ago. And it's this incredible treasure. It's offering us gifts if we recognize what it's showing us. And like you're saying, one of the things it's showing us is that, yeah, time and space are just constructs, that this cosmos we live in is a whole. It's an inseparable, seamless whole, not made out of separate things that are interacting. There's no separation anywhere. And yeah, and all of that, when you take that in, is reflecting our nature. It begins to connect us with who we are, you know, because when you understand that quantum physics, it's not saying there's nothing out there, it's just saying it's not objective in the way we've been entrained to think it is. If we conceive of the world as being separate from ourselves and objectively existing, no, the world is not objective in that way. And when you really take in the realization, oh, there's nothing objective out there, Well, then what happened to the subject? What happened to you? If I'm a subject, I am in need of an object to be in relationship to in order to be a subject. Your subject being this reference point in space, time, and self, a skin encapsulated ego. But when I realize there is no object, then all of a sudden it brings into question, well, what happened to the subject? Who am I? And you see, that's where quantum physics promotes itself to be a spiritual path.
Yeah, so you can't even really find yourself because you are apparently not a subject, right? So
Yeah.
it's just one whole and it's all interconnected. And in a way, it's like, yeah, I can see that. Like, nothing exists independently. It's just not possible. Like even a human body, we need food, right? So, and that comes from the ground and from the rain, and it's all, yeah, it's all interconnected. It's, in a way, we can see that very logically. Yeah, it is. Although it appears very separate, it's like, yeah, of course.
Right. But that's like, but to make the distinction between appearance, like it's very convincingly appearing like it's objective and separate, but the actual truth of it is that, yeah, we don't exist as separate selves, that we have relationship, we only exist in relationship to the environment and to other beings who themselves don't exist as independently, intrinsically, objectively existing objects, but they themselves only exist in relation to, you know, their environment and other beings who themselves do. So there's no actually independent, intrinsically existing anything. We're all interdependent and interconnected, and seeing that helps us to snap out of the imagination that we exist as a separate self, you know, and that's the core mistaken conception, you could say, about who we are. And when you see through that, then you recognize, oh wow, we're dream characters in each other's dreams, just like every character in your dream at night is a dream character, being that they're an aspect of you. And when you think about it, you realize, oh, we're actually interdependent, we're interconnected, there's no separate self. Same thing. That's, you know, what I'm pointing at is really, this is the medicine for the insanity that's playing out in our world. And if I could just say one thing, you see, because quantum physics, it's so profound. I mean, I can't even find the words for it. But like, say, for example, if I'm, you know, a physicist or a person, and I just think that the world objectively exists, right? And that's my experience. That's the way it appears, right? And yet what I'm pointing at, and it's not just me, every spiritual tradition throughout time immemorial has pointed out this universe is like a dream. And being like a dream, if I'm in a dream and if I'm holding a point of view in the dream, being that it's nothing other than this reflection of my own mind, has no choice but to shapeshift and offer back to me and reflect back all of the evidence confirming my viewpoint, because the dream is nothing other than a mirror of my viewpoint. So if I'm holding the point of view that this world exists objectively and I'm in a dream, like the waking dream, then the waking dream will offer me all the evidence confirming my viewpoint that this world is objective, separate from me. And now I have proof confirming my point of view as being true. So then I get even more entrenched in my viewpoint. And the more entrenched in my viewpoint I get, the more the world will just reflect it back ad infinitum. It's a feedback loop in which I'm basically entrancing myself. I'm hypnotizing myself via the genius of my own mind. And then you know, it's a state of madness. And that's basically to tap into our creative power, but unconsciously, in a way where instead of serving us, it's killing us. And that, what I've just described, that's the illness, and that's also the solution of all of the myriad world crises. You know, and what I'm meaning is that as more and more of us actually realize this and connect with each other and have the realization, oh my God, I have this unbelievable creative power inside of me. I just haven't known I've had it. And when we connect with other people who also realize that, we can connect with each other and get in phase and in sync with each other. And that's where we can really, you know, help the world and change the world in a real way.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's dreamlike. So it's interesting because I also have this feeling that, oh, I want to help the world, I want to save the world, and I want to do my part. And at the same time, I'm projecting this world. So it's like, okay, maybe I have to figure out who is this that's projecting this world, and does this actually really exist? And
Yeah. Well, that what you're pointing at, that's so right on, because if you're in a dream and you have the recognition of that you're in a dream, right? And it would be not overly intelligent to be wanting to, like, save the dream, even though it appears very convincingly like it's in trouble or something like that. It makes or to control the dream, it makes way more sense to be in control of yourself, you know, and to have the realization of who you are. When you have the realization of your nature, that's the point where you can then, like, step into the dream and be of benefit, be an instrument for whatever, for who you are to come through you, instead of thinking the problem is outside of yourself. Because as soon as you do that, then you've fallen asleep,
yeah. And so I like that, okay, the power is within me, and I am in a way a co-creator.
Right.
Yet at the same time, it feels like, okay, if I'm not really here, the ego doesn't really exist, and I'm part of the whole, then there's actually not even someone here that can go out and save the world. It's like, I also hear that the whole is already in harmony and complete as it is.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, what is there for me to do? It's like there's not even a free will to do anything, because who is there to have free will? And I don't
Yeah, but
know, it's confusing.
it's a little bit tricky, because the idea of free will, if we're still identified with this reference point in space and time, with the ego, so to speak, with the subject, then we have no free will, because then we can think all we want we're doing something out of our free will, but we're actually unwittingly, there's something unconscious that's acting itself out through us. And so that's not free will. But when you have the experience of having realization of your nature, my teachers describe it as like, yeah, you can put your hand in the air and you can move it either any way you want. That's the free will. Then you're totally a sovereign being who's in touch with your creative power, and but that's why the real medicine for the madness that's playing out is for us to really connect with our nature, with our true nature. Now, it's interesting, when we connect with our true self, and that's such a catchphrase, but the idea, what is our true self? Well, our true self is by nature creative. And so, in other words, when we connect with our true self, then we become an instrument for the creativity that's intrinsic to the universe to come through us. And the more then we become creative agents, then the more we get to realize our true self in a positive feedback loop, in which we're actually creating something that's in service to the whole and to ourselves. Okay, so that's what I'm really talking about. And when you have the realization of that, another way of saying it is that we can discover that we actually are, or can consciously participate in our own evolution, and that there's no force outside of ourselves that's doing that. There's no external God figure who's going to come and save us. No, the source of the madness that we're playing out is within ourselves. And, and that's both good and bad news. But the good news part of it is that, oh, then what that means is that if we shed light on that madness within ourselves, of the part of us that's colluding with evil unknowingly, even though we're identified with the right, light and righteousness, and we're on the side of good. But if we're, like, fighting the darkness, we're, unwittingly in bed with it, or in cahoots with it, or colluding with it. What I'm pointing out is to really to actually shed light on our collusion with evil. And that's even in the little moments where we're turning away. You see, once we turn, like, and have this blind eye to facing the darkness in ourselves, then we're complicit with evil. Then we're actually contributing to the evil in the collective.
Yeah, so it's like if you can embrace your own shadow, all that unconscious, all this unknown, because
Yeah,
who
yeah.
knows what's like the ocean, so deep and it's big, and who knows about what
Well,
it.
it's so funny you mentioned the ocean and the unknown, because some of the greatest quantum physicists are saying we're at the point in our evolutionary history with the discovery of quantum physics that it's like we're at the shoreline of the ocean, and it's a vast ocean, and we've only first begun to like touch the littlest bit of this ocean. That's really the unknown. And instead of, I think of the unconscious, instead of the unconscious just being, oh, it's a repository of like all the repressed stuff and negative stuff. No, the unconscious is incredibly creative and it's unknown, and the idea is for us to develop, to have relationship, with the unconscious, to develop an intimate relationship. Each of us has a part of us that is awake, whether you call it, the angel, the muse, the God within, the daimon, the genius. There are all these words, trying to name this miracle-like entity in us that's both who we are and it's beyond our conscious mind. And real therapy has to do with connecting us as, this you could say as an ego with that higher self, such that there's a relationship and a dialogue. I know for me, I don't write my books. I mean, even though I'm the author of my books, no, I get downloads. I become an instrument where all of a sudden I've learned to distinguish between when I'm in my just, the neurotic monkey mind, and when all of a sudden I'm getting a download from something that's beyond myself. And because there's a different signature and I've attuned to, oh, now I'm getting a download, I need to listen. And then all of a sudden I'm just the employee and I'm getting the dictates from the boss, and it's telling me what I'm going to write about and how I'm going to write about it. And I've just offered myself as an instrument for that, to be in service. That's how my books happen. Not, I don't write them as an ego at all.
Yeah, and I know some of your other books, it really goes into also the shadow part of us, and Jung, right? A lot of
Yeah, totally.
yeah. So it sounds like it's also a lot about embracing all of what you are, what you call evil and what you call beautiful and good. It's embracing all of yourself in a way, and then you can also embrace the whole world as it is. And so maybe in that something happens, alchemy happens, where the shadow parts just kind of dissolve on their own. It does seem like if you show it love, if you can see and hear what is hidden, it'll be seen, and it'll let go of you. Kind of, it's
Yeah,
almost like a
yeah.
flow.
It's very much like that, in the sense that, the expression of seeing the dreamlike nature is compassion. The two go together. When you have the realization of the emptiness, that's a Buddhist term, that there's no intrinsic, independently existing objective world, that it's not separate from your own consciousness. That's the dreamlike nature. The spontaneous expression of that realization is compassion. And when you have compassion, think of it like, say if there's darkness in the room and you open up the blinds and light floods in. Well, the sunlight instantaneously just dissolves all the darkness, where the moment before the darkness seemed real. And all of a sudden, though, once it got illumined, it vaporizes as if it never even, existed in the first place. So that's very much like when you connect with your nature, because our nature is love and compassion. When you connect in that way, then yeah, whatever darkness you have, it just kind of, becomes integrated. It evaporates into the wholeness. And that doesn't mean you don't still feel darkness at certain points, because we're not separate from the field. And there's darkness in the field. But then we've stepped into the function that I talk about, we're all like healers, wounded healers or shamans in training. And a shaman, out of their incredible empathy, they take on the illness of the field they're working with. And they fall sick. So they experience the illness from the inside. But instead of staying sick, that process becomes the doorway for them to even more deeply connect with their light. And that's all of us. So when we're feeling, we've all been sort of made sick by the incredible collective insanity. And but as would-be shamans, we have the choice of, we're either going to get stuck in that, and then we're going to need a healer, or if we connect with the healer within us, that we're actually shamans in training, then we're able to embrace and to have that experience of sickness and the darkness that we feel. That becomes the portal to even more deepen our connection with our wholeness. And that's the deeper archetype, the primary archetype that's activated in the collective unconscious right now, is the wounded healer shaman. And think about it, when somebody gets called to be a shaman, it's not something you voluntarily would choose to do. You'd have to be out of your mind, because the suffering is so overwhelming. But when you get called, it always involves making a descent into the underworld of the unconscious, where there's a death rebirth. And we're going through that individually and collectively as a species. And it's so helpful to actually recognize that, because that contextualizes our experience. Instead of, pathologizing ourselves, no, we're actually organs in the greater body politic of the collective, who are distilling the poisons in the field. And to the extent we do that, we then connect with our creative spirit. And by offering our creative gifts, we're actually offering medicine to the world.
Yeah. And so the unknown, it's a mystery. It's the unknown. Why are we here? What's the purpose? And we can speculate forever. And will we ever know? And maybe it's just not knowable, because the mind is the one that always knows. It's the one that analyzes. It's the one that is the subject object, you could say. As soon as you look at the object, it reflects what the subject is having the intention, or so you can never really know what is reality. It's like we're 7 billion people or so there are actually 7 billion worlds, because everyone has their own reality, in a way, their own projection. And so what is reality, right? And it's just unknown. Reality is unknown. I guess it's not something we can know, but maybe it's just something we can be, and we already are it. And it's just this.
Well, it makes me think of, like, in like, the wisdom traditions, and, like, for example, like in alchemy, they talk about the philosopher's stone, the Holy Grail, or, they have a lot of names for it. And they'll say the point is to become the philosopher's stone. And, and so as you were sharing that, I was thinking, yeah, well, right, there's the unknown, and we can never know it with our mind, but we can know who we are. And who we are is a mystery, in a way. And when we have the realization of our nature, it's not that we just have the knowledge of our nature, we know that we know. And that's where, like, I think of my teachers, who are genuinely like these realized beings, and they have this incredible confidence, and they don't have to prove anything to anyone or be a certain way or anything, because they know who they are. They know that they know. And that, and part of it, it's not knowing themselves as an object. They know that who they are is a mystery, and who we all are, that we're sharing a mystery. And But I would say there's something about being in service, stepping out of just being in service to ourselves and actually stepping into being in service to others, and combined with, it's just like being in a dream and you think it's real and you're being conditioned by the dream and you're reacting to your projections and you're in this cocoon that's suffocating you. And then you have the realization of the nature of your situation, that is that you're dreaming. And when you connect with other people who also have that realization, what you discover is that you can put that realization together. Like I was saying before, the sacred power of our dreaming is what I call it. And you have the realization, oh my God, this dream universe we're inhabiting is only manifesting in such a problematic, limited way because we've been conditioned to dream it that way, based on our programming. And in a dream, this is easy to imagine and to do. When you have that realization of recognizing the dreamlike nature and you connect with other dream characters who realize it, you discover, wow, we can change the dream by putting our realization together, and that's what this is all about. If there's a mystery, that has to do with unlocking the mystery of who we are. Christ in the Bible says, ye are gods, and scripture cannot be broken, which implies that, this is our destiny, and if he says something like, if you realize that, you'll be able to do even greater works than I. And it's that I'm talking about, that we have this enormous creative power, each one of us. When we connect with other people who realize that, we can connect and we can literally change the dream. And that's not new age woo-woo. That's, to participate in our own evolution, like I was saying, that's what this is all about. And then we become the mystery, but at least instead of feeling meaningless or hopeless, there's this incredible sense of purpose and of love and of genuinely helping other people, including ourselves.
Yeah, because there is no other, and once that is, we are one in a way, right? Because it's all interconnected.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's beautiful to have a world based on love and our nature, rather than what we all were taught, which is actually an illusion. It is ignorance, right? We were taught that we were this limiting self and there was subject object, and so we all programmed that way, and that's why the world is like this.
Totally.
Yeah. So it's beautiful if we can let go of that illusion, let go of that ego we think we are, and be our true self.
We don't even have to let go of it, because there's nothing to let go of, because it doesn't even exist. We just have to see through the illusion,
Yeah, see through it.
And be careful of our words, because we're continually casting spells on ourselves. If I say, oh, I have to let go of something, I'm subtly implying there's a something that exists that I need to let go of, and then I'm unwittingly entrancing myself.
Yeah. So, and you also write about how language and thinking, and it kind of keeps us
it keeps us trapped. It keeps us under the spell. I mean, how do you make a word? You spell it. So we're continually casting spells. But I'm pointing out, instead of casting a spell that's killing us, we can literally conjure up a spell that's healing us and awakening us.
Yeah. And it is basically being steeped in this, what we are, which is unknown, that cannot be known by the mind, but it's what you are. And it's actually very simple too. It's right here, right now, like this. Right?
Yeah. And I want to say, one of my Zen teachers, his main teaching was just, go straight, don't know, have don't know mind, not even I don't know, because you don't even know who the I is, just don't know. And that's in the spiritual traditions. In the West, they'll talk about like having like the unknowing, like a divine unknowing. So that sense of, there's nothing else to do other than just you become acquainted and familiar with your nature. And you just be that. You just abide in and as that. And everything becomes integrated through that lens. And in the tradition that I do practice to, they say, when you realize this, it cures the dis-ease of effort. That effort, that continual trying to become enlightened, that's the self-contraction, where in essence we're contracting against our radiance. And the solution to that, it's not like you need to do something, you just need to stop doing something, just to let your light shine. That's our nature. It's available right now, in the present moment.
Yeah, the pathless path. And that's also why it's so hard for us to get it. It's because it's so simple and obvious that it's just right here in this moment, and we are constantly seeking somewhere else and leaving ourselves, you could say.
Yeah, totally.
And then we think, no, it can't just be this is not enough. The mind cannot believe that, right? It's like, no, there's no way. And yeah. But it's just amazing sometimes with religions, and there are many years of practicing, when if it's that simple to just you already it, and you don't have to practice anything, you don't have to seek anything, you are just what you already are, and that's the most creative, loving self. So it doesn't sound difficult, but somehow most of us are lost in that illusion.
Yeah, for sure. No, totally. But that gives me hope, in the sense that, there are more and more of us who are plugging into our nature and are awakening to who we are, and are accessing, the creative spirit that comes through us. And that's why, in this time, it's really important to not get absorbed in despair or depression or pessimism, because when we're holding that viewpoint, being like a dream, we're just going to attract all the evidence that confirms how come we should be pessimistic, and then we're part of the problem, not part of the solution. So yeah, I'm really hopeful, and because there are so many people who are really waking up, and the point is to connect with each other. And
yeah, and I like what you said, don't know, because the mind will always say, oh yeah, I know, or I want to know. I mean, I'm a big mind person. I want to know everything. I'm curious. I want to explore everything, and it's okay too. But I can't expect an answer, because there is no answer really, right? It's like you never find the answer of reality, of the existence, or because it's a mystery. But it's okay to explore. But and I also know you say the question is actually more important than the answer, the right question, right? We can keep asking questions and explore, but it's something within that is almost beyond anything. Yeah,
it's who we are. It's our nature, and we've just been entranced to distract ourselves, thinking that the problem is outside of ourselves, and that the solution is outside of ourselves, and that's to feed our madness. That's to collude, with our own madness, for sure.
Yeah. Well, it was a very great conversation. I appreciate it, Paul, and your website.
Yeah. So I have a website, www.awakeninthedream.com. And, there's a ton of articles, all for free, ton of interviews. I just want to get this work out. And yeah, people can buy my books or set up a session, a private session and all that. Yeah, I just, I really hope people check it out, because, there's, my sense is that this, what we're talking about, it's medicine. It's what we're all thirsting for, and it can be really, really helpful. And yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much. Really, really a pleasure.